For most of the past 80 years, the United States had a singular strategic advantage. Not its military, not its economy, but its alliances. Tonight, that advantage is quietly eroding not because of an external enemy, but because of decisions made in Washington itself. Russia and China have spent decades trying to fracture America's network of allies. They use cyber warfare, disinformation, economic pressure, and they largely failed. In 2026, something remarkable is happening. The sitting American president is succeeding where they could not. Across Europe, governments are issuing joint warnings to the United States. At the United Nations, even close allies are publicly rebuking Washington. Intelligence sharing is being scaled back, military cooperation is being reconsidered, and yet the president insists America is respected again. If you want to understand how global power is really lost, it rarely collapses overnight. It erodes through trust, perception, and legitimacy. Stay with me, because to understand what's happening now, we first need to be clear about what exactly is breaking. For decades, American power rested on a simple, almost invisible agreement. The United States would lead, but it would also listen. It would act, but within rules it helped create. And in return, its allies accepted U.S. leadership, not out of fear, but out of trust. What is breaking today is not a treaty or a single alliance. It is that underlying bargain. When European leaders warn Washington about sovereignty and territorial integrity, they are not posturing. They are signaling a line has been crossed. When allies condemn U.S. military actions at the United Nations, they are not grandstanding. They are defending the system that once restrained everyone, including America. This is not about one controversial decision or one diplomatic misstep. It is about predictability versus impulse, institutions versus personality, rules versus whims. And once allies begin to doubt which of those governs American power, cooperation becomes risk management. To see how we arrived here, we have to step back beyond the headlines and look at the deeper historical cycle now repeating itself. The post-war world order did not emerge by accident. It was built on a lesson learned the hard way. When power is unconstrained, instability follows. After 1945, the United States helped construct a system designed to channel strength through institutions. Alliances were not just military tools, they were confidence mechanisms. They reassured smaller states, they constrained larger ones, and they made American power predictable. That predictability mattered more than dominance. Allies tolerated disagreements because they trusted the process. They accepted U.S. leadership because it came with restraint. What we are witnessing now is a reversal of that logic. When a U.S. president threatens allied territory, dismisses international law, or launches unilateral military actions, it revives an older pattern, great powers acting alone, testing limits, forcing others to hedge. History shows what happens next. Allies stop assuming protection and start planning alternatives. Cooperation turns conditional. Alignment becomes transactional. This is not sudden, it is cyclical. When the rules weaken, relationships follow. And once that cycle begins, it accelerates faster than leaders expect, because the first real break does not happen in public. It happens quietly behind closed doors. The shift became impossible to ignore when allies stopped speaking privately and started speaking together. Within a single week, European leaders issued a joint declaration aimed directly at Washington. Not Moscow, not Beijing, Washington. They warned that they would not stop defending sovereignty and territorial integrity in response to threats coming from the United States itself. That alone would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Then came the United Nations. At an Emergency Security Council meeting, America faced a rare rebuke. Even its closest allies argued that U.S. military actions in Venezuela violated the UN Charter and chipped away at the foundation of international order. This was not symbolism. This was institutional rupture. When Germany's president spoke of a breakdown of values by our most important partner, he wasn't making policy. He was naming a reality others were already adjusting to. If you're finding this unsettling, you should. Because moments like this are how global systems begin to realign, not with explosions, but with statements. And once allies speak in unison, the next stage is not rhetoric. It is action. Take a closer look at what's happening on the ground. The Netherlands has announced it will scale back its participation in US-led anti-drug missions in the Caribbean. Why? Because the Trump administration's military operations against civilian boats have become untenable. The UK, long a steadfast partner in military intelligence, is following suit. For the first time, the country has suspended intelligence sharing with the United States in response to similar actions in the Caribbean. These are not rogue states. These are core allies. And they are making decisions based on the perception that working with the US is no longer safe. When a partner like Denmark, historically a close ally, describes the US as a potential security risk, it signals something far beyond a diplomatic spat. It signals the loss of trust in America's ability to act responsibly. This is not just about policy disagreements. It's about something deeper. The very legitimacy of American leadership is now in question. It's not just the world turning away from the US. It's the world reorganizing itself in real time without us. What's happening here is more than a crisis. It's the beginning of a new global order. The implications of the US abandoning its role as the anchor of global cooperation go far beyond the breaking of old alliances. The real question is, what happens next? As we watch this unfold, three potential futures emerge. The first scenario, a world where the US is sidelined. In this future, allies do not wait for Washington to act. They form new coalitions. They take up their own defense, build independent trade relationships, and pivot toward new centers of influence, notably China and Russia. In this world, America's military might is no longer enough to compel cooperation. Its economic leverage has already been eroded by tariffs and trade wars. The second scenario, a world of fractured diplomacy. Here, America tries to regain its position, but the damage is already done. Allies are now too wary. They build coalitions around shared interests, but are unwilling to rely on the US for leadership. Instead of a unified West, we see isolated, competing centers of power. It's a world of uncertainty, one where alliances shift in response to US whims. The third scenario, a return to American leadership. This is the least likely of all, but not impossible. For this to happen, the US would have to undergo a massive transformation in its political culture. The presidency would need to be redefined, one that abandons impulsive foreign policy for a more strategic, measured approach. But that would require a reset on a scale few can even imagine. No matter which path we take, the trajectory is clear. A future where US leadership is no longer taken for granted. The question is whether we can reverse this course before it's too late. We're witnessing the unraveling of a long-standing global order, not because of a single event, but because of the erosion of trust, credibility, and shared values. This isn't just about one man or one presidency. It's about the world's evolving perception of the United States. And the consequences are profound. When international respect erodes, it doesn't happen quietly. It happens through a series of moves and counter-moves, each one deeper than the last. Every time an ally distances itself, every time a new coalition is formed in America's absence, the US is left weaker. But this is not just an intellectual exercise. This is about real lives, real people. The consequences of a fractured world order won't be felt in some abstract future. They are already being felt by those who lose access to global markets, who watch as international law weakens, and who witness a destabilizing world unfold before their eyes. America's future on the world stage is being decided right now. Will we continue to see a world where allies look elsewhere? Or can we find a way to rebuild the relationships that made America a leader. The next few years will determine the answer. In the end, this isn't just about policy shifts or diplomatic spats. It's about the very soul of America's global influence. For decades, the US was the cornerstone of a world order based on shared values, democracy, stability, and the rule of law. But the foundation of that order is crumbling, and the question now is whether America can rebuild it or whether history will move on without us. We are standing at a crossroads. The actions we take today will echo for decades, shaping how the world sees us and how we see ourselves. In this new era, America's role is no longer guaranteed. The world is shifting. Alliances are breaking, new ones are forming, and the old structures are being rewritten. So, where do we go from here? The answer isn't clear yet, but one thing is certain. The time for reckoning is now. The future of the US on the world stage depends on the choices we make today. And that future is far from guaranteed.